2021 TTC meeting. Pursuant to the City of Roanoke Emergency Ordinance adopted by the RVTPO Policy Board on April 23rd, 2020, and the 2020 Virginia General Assembly Legislation H-29 enacted April 24th, 2020, the February meeting of the Transportation Technical Committee will be held virtually on Thursday, February 11th, 2021 at 1:30 p.m. via Zoom. Under the current state of emergency and until further notice, it has been deemed unsafe to assemble a quorum of a public body in one place. Any members of the public may view and participate in the meeting with electronic means. Meeting details are listed on the second page of the agenda. All materials made available to the members will be made available to the public at the same time by posting on the RVARC website. And with that, we will ask for the roll to be called.
Mariel Fowler.
Here.
Peter Vollison. Cody Sexton.
Here.
Dan Brew.
Here.
Megan Cronice.
Here.
Will Crawford.
Here.
Chris Chittum.
Here.
Mark Jamison.
Here.
Ben Tripp. Anita McMillan.
Here.
Nathan McClung.
Here.
Dorian Allen.
Here.
Liz Belcher.
Here.
Okay. Nathan Sanford. Dan Sonnenklar. Michael Gray.
Here.
And Kevin Jones, because he hasn't rejoined us yet. So we have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. If, now we need approval of the consent agenda, both for the agenda and for action on last month's meetings. I guess we would ask for a motion unless there's any discussion.
So moved.
Second. Anita.
Motion by Chris Chittum, second by Anita. Any discussion at all? Revisions to the minutes? Hearing none, Christina, would you call the roll, please?
Mariel Fowler.
Yes.
Cody Sexton.
Yes.
Dan Brew.
Yes.
Megan Cronice.
Yes.
Will Crawford.
Yes.
Chris Chittum.
Yes.
Mark Jamison.
Yes.
Anita McMillan.
Yes.
Nathan McClung.
Yes.
Dorian Allen.
Yes.
Liz Belcher.
Yes.
And Michael Gray.
Yes.
Okay, that passes.
All right. For chairman's remarks, just a couple things of which to make you aware. At the TPO meeting last month, the TPO board approved the 2021 safety performance measure targets and the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan performance measure targets that had been previously recommended by the TTC. And the second item to make you aware of is that the Regional Commission is in the process of developing their annual work plan. So if your locality has not yet submitted any requests for projects for the next fiscal year, and you would like to do so, please send those requests along to Jeremy Holmes as soon as you possibly can. The deadline for those submissions was actually last Friday, and the draft Unified Planning Work Program is scheduled to be shared with the TTC next month in March. That's all that I have, and with that, Christina, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So this item is the continued development of the FY22 through 27 Surface Transportation Block Grant Financial Plan. And in the staff report that was provided in the agenda packet, I've provided some updates on the project cost adjustment requests by project. We heard last month that there may be some adjustments to the Roanoke River Greenway Green Hill Park section and the water pollution control section. So some cost estimates are being worked out now for those project adjustments. So we hope to hear from the county about that before the next meeting in March. Also heard from the county about the additional requested for the Orange Market Park and Ride project, which is $892,526. And then I've added there the Roanoke River Greenway East additional request of $750,000 towards construction. And then also reflected the update for the Gus Nix Boulevard pedestrian and bicycle crossing request of additional $234,262. So that's the information that I have currently. And hopefully some of those to be determined will be determined before we meet again in March. Congratulations to the region, really. I think we did really well in Smart Scale. The draft scenario was released just a few weeks ago. For the projects that are included in the STBG financial plan, there were 9 that were seeking Smart Scale funding, and 7 of those have been included in the draft scenario. So that leaves, I guess, the question about how to proceed with the other 2 projects and the conditionally committed funds for those 2 projects. I've reached out to the project sponsors and I've heard back from Roanoke County that they don't have alternate plans for funding that project, which is the Route 460 alternate 220 intersection improvements project. 2.5 million had been conditionally committed, and so that'll be returned back to the TPO. And that'll go into the pot as we look towards new applications for the fall. And then I'm still waiting to hear back from Botetourt County regarding the 220 Super Street and Access Management Project. There's 2 million of conditionally committed funds there. So I have not yet heard back from VDOT about how much STBG money is going to be available within this FY 22 through 27 financial plan. What we have there are what was estimated a year ago, and that sometimes fluctuates. I have heard that in the last COVID relief bill that was approved by Congress in December, that there is some money that's going towards STBG, and so that'll trickle through the regular formula program. And I don't know yet how much would be coming to the RVTPO. So hopefully we'll have that information for the March meeting as well. So I'm not asking for any action today. There's still information left to be determined before recommendation can be sought from this body, but just wanted you to have the most recent information, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question real quick.
Sure thing, Anita.
Christina, if a project that has been funded but is not, the fund will not be under STBG, which is HACIP money, will it consider a new project for if we ask for additional funding under STBG, which is due in September, I guess?
Yes, if you already have some money on an existing project but need to seek additional funding for that project, that can be submitted as a new application in the fall.
Okay, that will be the Hardy Road crosswalk.
Okay.
Thank you. I just want to make sure.
So Christina, no action is required today. We are waiting on VDOT to finalize or give us some information on the final numbers that will be available to us in the next plan. And we do have several things on the table for consideration. Would you expect that action would be taken next month on those? Or are we just waiting for VDOT's final numbers and then we'll consider that again?
So each time in the staff report, I provided a draft financial plan. And so that's on page 13 of the agenda packet. And so I'll continue to update this financial plan with the information that I have available. And then I'm really just going to need guidance from this committee on how you want to handle these additional funding adjustments. If you want to, if the group supports giving the additional requested money for each of the projects. So that's what I'll be looking for. And so to the extent that you want to discuss that now, I think Chairman Tripp had started that conversation last month, going through and asking if there were any concerns about different projects and the requests. So.
And Mr. Chairman, I have a comment about Botetourt's project.
Okay.
Certainly, Cody.
So Christina, I apologize for not getting back sooner, but trying to sort of tie up some questions on my end, but pretty much like Roanoke County, we don't have an alternative funding source for that project. But I know I have investigated options with VDOT about maybe phasing that project, or at least putting it into some smaller, more digestible pieces. So as of now, that's sort of where we stand, but at least the original amount of approved non-conditional money, we would like to stay, and the conditional money, we could sort of see what happens.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Anita?
as far as I know that Christina has put to be determined as far as the Walnut Avenue Phase 2 by March, early March, we should know if Phase 2 from Farmers Market to First Street will require additional funding. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, Christina, I think what I'm hearing is that we have several things that are on the table for consideration in terms of, I guess, what I would call a mid-year adjustment or amendment. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I guess at some point you're going to need action from the TTC. So while there's no motion, we have some things on the table for consideration. Perhaps each of us can consider that. And then next month, if there are, I guess if there are concerns, those ought to be brought forward at some point between now and next month. But conceivably, if there are no concerns voiced, we could take action at that point.
Correct. And at least from the last meeting, at that time, we knew about the Oak Grove request. We discussed the Gus Nix request, the return of the money from the city's Greenway project, and then discussed giving money to the Roanoke River Greenway East project. So some of these items we had already discussed, and there hadn't seemed to be any concern on those items. The Orange Market request of $892,526, we now know that amount. So we could get the group's feel on support for that request. And that'll just kind of feed the information on how we work the draft financial plan that we can bring back to the group in March.
But there could be separate actions on this collective set of requests. And then there still is going to be action required when we know what the final financial plan looks like.
Yes.
We have a sense for when that might be. Michael, do you know?
Christina, also
Go ahead, Liz.
I was just wondering if Megan wanted to speak to the $2.5 million for 460 and 220. Is that possibly money that would come out of the 27 commitment to fund some of these other things, or does the county have a position on that yet?
Liz, Christina mentioned that just a few minutes ago, that we've said that we don't have money to fund the rest of that project, so that money can go back in the pot. We don't have 19 million to throw at that project right now, so
Okay.
we'll try again later, so that can go back.
Okay. I wasn't clear going back in the pot.
Yeah, we're fine with that. We'll try again next round.
All right, I have a question for Michael. You're still on the call, Michael?
Yes, I am.
Just out of curiosity, do we have a sense for when we might know something more about the final financial outlook? And is it safe to assume, I mean, at one time, y'all had taken a look at these projects and were looking at sort of the order at which things might be funded and when? Are the projects, the 5 or 6 projects that are on the table for potential action next month also in that consideration, or is that an issue at this point? Does that make sense?
Let me start with the first one. I reached out to our financial folks in Richmond late last week and heard from them earlier this week that they expect to have the numbers out to the TPOs, MPOs in Virginia within a couple weeks. So I guess we're almost a week into that promise. So I'm hoping by next week, or maybe if not the week after, we'll get something. And then I think the second question you had was related to, have we looked at where the money needs to go? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, just in terms of the timing, I recall y'all had, in the past had looked at funding and try to get projects and funding allocated in the right year for the right portion of the project and all that. And I just didn't know whether
Right.
the things that were on the table needed to go into that mix or not.
Well, we haven't been asked to do that this year, so we haven't taken a look at that. We'll be glad to help if that's the case and y'all want us to take a look at it. I'll talk to our programming folks so we can sit down and take a crack at it if you want to. But I guess, are there still unknowns on a couple of these, how much they need? Is that what I'm seeing?
I mean, I guess my question is, well, I don't know the answer to that. I'll put Christina on the spot for that. But then I just didn't know whether that needed to go into the mix or whether that was even necessary at all again. And maybe Christina can answer that.
Yeah, I think once we have an idea of how much the money folks are needing, so when we hear back about the Walnut Avenue project, I don't think we'll know anything about the Tinker Creek Trail Extension project for this adjustment. I think that'll come at a future time. And then we've got the 2 Roanoke County Greenway projects that we need to hear something about. So I think when we get more of that information, then we can get together with VDOT and look at the schedules of all of these projects.
Okay.
And then figure out that financial plan, how the money's shaken out.
So I think what I'm hearing is that conceivably as early as next month's meeting, we might have a little more direction on the specific action that would be required for both these mid-year amendments as well as the financial plan.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on this topic today? Anything else on your end, Christina?
No, I don't have anything else. Thank
All
you.
right. Hearing none, we'll move on the agenda. Next is the public participation plan, and that's going to be discussed by Rachel.
Thank you. So, you all recall we did a major update of our public participation plan in 2018, the first time in over 10 years. And in that update, we said we would review it every 3 years and adjust as needed. So we reviewed it, and we have a few, nothing major, cleaning up some things, updating a couple of things. You can read the staff report. I'm not going to read off the entire list, but I just want to point out a couple of things. The final comment period of public hearing, the state law says we have to take out newspaper ads on those. Those are expensive and very ineffective in actually alerting anybody to this comment opportunity. So we just clarified that to make sure that if the state law happens to change, I don't know if that might happen, but if it does happen, that we wouldn't still be required to do that. And then we had a 15-day requirement for a comment period. Well, because of the way timing of newspaper ads and such works out, it effectively ended up being a 21-day requirement. If we changed it to 14 days, then that was helpful. So we can take off an entire week that way. this this particular plan, the public participation plan, requires a 45-day public comment period. That's in federal legislation, so we can't change that. So we will do that public comment period, and we anticipate this getting approved in April, potentially. Yeah, if you have any comments about the public participation plan, I've gotten one email so far. Haven't heard from anyone else, but definitely let me know anything you see there that needs to be changed. And then kind of as part of this review process, we looked back at our public participation efforts over the last 3 years, in particular over the last year and a half, because over the last year and a half, because that's really when we've done a lot of surveys. We've transitioned from just having a comment period to where whenever we have a comment period, we try to do some kind of survey, because people don't just comment, but if you ask them even a single question and you give them an opportunity to comment, then they do. So we went from 0 to 2 comments on a typical comment period or comment opportunity to we consistently get lots of comments. And some of them are pretty informed and useful. Not all of them, but some. So just doing surveys has made a big difference in our input, and the quality of input and the quantity of input, just everything about it. We've learned a lot about surveys in the process, and you can all read this report that's in the agenda packet. I just wanted to point out a couple things, lessons learned, having to do with the language and terminology that's in the survey. So what's happened sometimes, especially if there's a state or federal deadline, and we have a very short turnaround, then we end up with a project name or project description that was created for internal use. And the public can't necessarily understand what that means. Improvements to such and such. This doesn't mean much. What does that mean? So we can't get meaningful public input if people don't know what that means. And so we've been working to create or to come up with meaningful titles and descriptions, so we can get input on that, but that takes time. And so when there's like a really fast turnaround, that can be a problem. And I think we're all getting better at that, and we have a better understanding of what we need in order to be able to provide that information to the public. I wanted to mention a little bit about the survey promotion strategies, and particularly with the Title VI compliance. So we found, I feel like putting it up on the website is the equivalent, is what should be done instead of a newspaper ad. I mean, we do both, but that's really all that's needed to have that notice out there so that somebody can know about it if they're interested. It should be on the webpage. Obviously, more active approaches, that's a passive approach to, someone has to go to the website, they have to be interested in it. So we do some more active approaches to get more input, in particular the Facebook ads. Now, the Facebook population is not necessarily representative of the whole population. It's going to be somewhat skewed. There's other social medias. In general, Facebook is by far the best return on investment, the best response rate compared to other social media platforms. With Facebook, we could target specific zip codes. And so typically what we do is we start a survey and we put ads that are targeted to all the RVTPO zip codes. And then a week or maybe 2 weeks into the survey, we look at our responses, and those zip codes that the percentage of responses are less than that zip code's proportion of the population of the whole region. We then, for the following week, our ads go to those zip codes that are those under responding zip codes. And then this is iterative. So we keep doing that. At the end, we end up with just 2 zip codes. We're still advertising to, it's always the same 2. But using this approach, we can now regularly get at least 1 response from every zip code in the RVTPO. And the last couple of surveys, our proportion of responses has been within 5% of that zip code's, each zip code's proportion of the population. So that's been really successful in getting a good geographic diversity. Of course, our demographic that is under responding relative to its proportion of the population is African American, and that's typical, of course, of most cities, especially in this area. So where we've made a lot of improvements there is through an email list. Every time somebody takes a survey, we ask for your email address. About 25-30% of people will give us their email address. If you give us their email address, it goes onto an email list. Next time we do a survey, we send you an email saying, here's another opportunity for your input. Well, so that particular email list, since these are people who have already taken a survey, we get maybe 30 or more percent response from that email list. Like 30 or more percent of the people on that list will take another survey. So I have been, any opportunity I see, if there's someone I think might be interested in taking one of our surveys and who is an African American, I proactively ask them for their email and ask if I can add them to this list. That has been the most successful approach in increasing that number until we are now at, I think our most recent survey had, I believe, 6% of people responded as African American. That's still far short of the 14% of our region, but it's a lot better than the 1 or 2 individuals we used to get. So the other thing I wanted to mention is the transportation equity chats that we did. Many of you were involved in that. We don't, unfortunately, have a way to say that, you know, these chats resulted in this number of people taking the survey, because we couldn't link it up that way. We could look at how many people viewed the videos, the people reached, and the engagement. Those are social media terms. And those are impressive. So a lot of people have seen or have had the opportunity to see these videos. Also, I thought they were really wonderful conversations. They're really interesting. Antoine was the interviewer. He's a local advocate and an African American, and he did a wonderful job, I felt, with the interviews. And we all learned a lot about public input and opportunities for public input at the locality level as well as the regional level. And then as staff, we learned the technology of doing this sort of activity. And we've been able to draw on that in other efforts since then. Happy to answer any questions about this. And otherwise, if you have any comments on the public participation plan draft, just please let me know with an email or phone call.
Very good, Rachel. I'm impressed with your efforts to expand your reach and get more input. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
So right now you're just looking for any feedback that you might gather over the next month or so. And then at some point there will be action required to adopt the plan.
That's right. Probably April.
Okay. Any comments today or further discussion? All right, if you would each take another look and send any comments to Rachel over the next month, that would be great. All right, I have next on the agenda is an update on the FDA 5310 funding application process. Brian?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me share my screen here. Let's see. Well, let's try that again. Don't see it. All right. All right, as I updated you all last month, wanted to now bring to you the those applications that were submitted to the for the 5310 program. And I guess at the outset here, I was remiss in not stressing the importance of the TTC and the TPO's role in not only approving ultimately by inclusion in the TIP, but determining that these projects are relevant for the region. So for example, we've got some new projects here. The Roanoke County project would require you all to recommend, if it was funded, would require you all to recommend to the TPO and through the full amendment process, adding it to the TIP. The other two projects, the Encircle passenger 5-passenger van with ramps purchase, and the radar operating assistance and van purchase are existing projects. So those would be added in through administrative adjustments. So if you take a look here at the bottom of this slide, this is the amount that we have, we being the RVTPO region, from FTA. It's a combination of $228,633 for this annual apportionment, which does require a match, and we'll get into what those matches are for what types of activities. And then, of course, with the coronavirus, the CRRSAA, the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, there's a no match of $40,000 there. So that total is not enough, and we'll see here in a little bit what I'm talking about. It's not enough to dole out or allocate to all three of the applications that we have here. So that's one of the things that we'll talk about in terms of how the TTC can be active in terms of perhaps maybe commenting, providing comments to DRPT during the comment process for the Secure Improvement Program, and any recommendations they may have. So again, just to kind of break that down, the Encircle or LFS Virginia request has $50,000 for a paratransit vehicle replacement, and the matches here for the capital program grants are 80-20 federal and local. As you can see, same here with Radar's 2 paratransit vehicles that they're requesting for a total of 130. Then we get into 5310 program operating grants for operation assistance, and again, you're looking at Radar's annual request of $247,700, and they have they'll offset those matches, which in this case the FTA, the state, and the local matches are 50%, 40%, and 10% respectively. So that 12,000 then is applied as leverage for each of those pots. So that lowers that amount for each of those 3 match funding sources. Again, Roanoke County being a new applicant for services for Fortran, and the I guess as a note, the contract ends for current operation services through via their provider on, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe it's January 11th of next year. And the request is for service that picks up from January 12th of 2020 to the end of that federal fiscal year, September 30th. And again, the same matches are applied here, 50, 40, and 10. And I mentioned this the schedule last month a little bit, but I've put a few additional things here. Of course, the deadline for the applications was February 1st. Now and next month, DRPT looks at the applications and reviews them. And again, I talked about the public comment period. So from April to May is when DRPT will be receiving comments on their portion of the SYIP, the 6-year improvement program, and this can be again, this could be a place where if TTC chose to comment on their thoughts of preferred projects, that sort of thing, that could be done. And of course, CTB approves the SYIP, and then and then again, talking about any modifications administratively, those are changes that don't require an amendment process, and just roughly changing the dollar figures of the scope, and the projects are usually the same. They're not new projects or any amendments, as might be the case if Roanoke County is funded to the tip. That'll occur in the summer of this year. So that's really kind of all I had at this point. If anybody has any questions or thoughts or needs more information, we can provide that to them.
Brian, based on your slide here, DRPT will review the applications, make some recommendations in terms of draft allocations, and that's really the opportunity for us to then provide comment if we have any.
Well, there's a couple different opportunities that you have. But yeah, for these 3 applications, the opportunity would be from April to May, that comments could be submitted for the 3 projects. Now and that's DRPT's public comment process. Now, our public comment process would kick in if Roanoke County's project is funded, and this is obviously something new, because this is the first this is our first locality that's applied for 5310 funding, and so if they were to be awarded the funding, then because that is a new project, it would trigger the amendment process and our public comment process, which obviously you all are a major part of there naturally, but if members or localities wanted to, agencies wanted to comment, that April to May period would be for the 3 projects to DRPT. Yeah.
Would this be new money coming to our program to support these programs, or is this coming out of existing funds that would then have to be reallocated otherwise?
The only new money per se is this coronavirus funding. Now that's supplemented, but the apportionment right now, so you if you just take that top number I mentioned, which is 228,633. Now, if we, if you combine those 2 amounts together, we've got 365. Now, I beg your pardon, 265,651, and the available, that's available this year. The current requests for federal funds is 365,634. So it's just about 100,000 more. So yeah, so it's definitely, it would be there would definitely wouldn't be any balance in my mind. In fact, there would be either I guess, and Dan Santa Clara, if you want to chime in here if I'm wrong, I would imagine DRPT would do one of a couple things. One, either they would reduce some of all or to account for being able to fund all three, or 2 out of 3 possibly would be funded. Is that somewhat accurate?
Yeah, from what I understand about the 5310 program, and you all can hear me, correct?
Yes.
If not, okay. Is that they will make the decision based on the entire project. So I don't know that they will come in and ask you all to reduce the costs of each individual one, but instead approve the ones that do fit into the available funding. Based on how there is a prioritization process that our 5310 manager goes through to score projects. And so it would be subject to that. That's generally how we deal with grants. I am not completely familiar with the 5310 program because there's some provisions in there that are just unique to that program. But that's generally how we treat things. Does that provide you with a little bit more? Was that helpful?
Yeah, yes, thank you. That's very helpful. So I hope, Mr. Chair, that answers the the question if hopefully not in a roundabout sort of way.
I mean, I think it does. I'm trying to put it in the context of why this is important to the TTC. And I think what I'm hearing is that these are funds that are available to the TPO. The applications will go to DRPT for a draft funding allocation, and we'll be asked to approve that recommendation from DRPT.
Yes, that's correct. And
okay.
It also is a way that the TTC can and the TPO can evaluate. I mean, obviously, we've never had knock on something. We've never had a projects pulled out of the tip because the MPO or the TTC chose to refuse their inclusion. But this again is a way to determine what projects are best for the region. And these projects, all 3 of these projects, do serve the environs of the region. So it's it's keeping the regional priorities. It's ensuring that those projects that we ultimately do want to be included in the TIP are included in the TIP, and so that's and if there are projects that are, again, we've got 3 projects here, and potentially 2 will be funded. If we feel that we have a preference or a priority, if members feel that we want these 2 to be the top ones, then that would be a reason why I would, if I were in your place, would comment to DRPT.
Right.
Again, it's just coordination. It's just overall coordination with us at the TPO, you all as localities, the transit agencies, just sort of a full circle coordination.
Fair enough. All right, thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments today on this topic? All right, we'll close that out. The next thing I see on the agenda is any comments by either members or citizens who may be on the call. Christina or Brian, do we have anybody else on the call other than members and the regular visitors?
Mr. Chair, I do not see anyone that's shall we say unfamiliar.
All right.
No.
With that, I don't know that there's anything else on the agenda. Anything else that anyone needs to bring up or would like to bring up? Christina, anything else?
No, I don't have anything else, Mr. Vice Chair.
All right, with that, we will, I guess I need a motion to adjourn.
No.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great, safe day and safe weekend with all this weather coming in.
Thank you, you too.
All right, goodbye.
Bye.